Hi, my name is Nikki Skuce, and I'm with the Northern Confluence Initiative based here on Wet'suwet'en territory. And I'm also the co-chair of the BC Mining Law Reform Network. And we are in strong support of modernizing the Mineral Tenure Act. It's been a long time coming. In fact, it really played a role, mining has really played a role in the settling of and the creation of British Columbia. And I don't think many people realize just how interconnected they are. Instead, we sort of paint this really romanticized view of mining where, in tourism brochures, you can go drive the Gold Rush Trail, or, you can go pan for gold at Barkerville, or you can even book Britannia Mine for your wedding if you wanted. So there's sort of this sort of romanticized view, and yet the creation of British Columbia was really, there was a big gold rush that happened, in particular hearing about some gold that was found in the Caribou, and it exploded the population. That word got out to Washington and California, and that exploded the population in Victoria. Like thousands of people showed up. And at the time, James Douglas was the governor. And so he, to get sort of mining under control, did a couple things. One, got British Columbia to be part of the colony, and then passed one of the first pieces of legislation that was passed in British Columbia in 1859 was the Goldfields Act. And what that did was that it granted these miners what's called a free entry certificate. And it gave you free and prior use of the land. So it ignored Indigenous rights and peoples. And this is still the same certificate that you get today. But I think what's not really, the stories that aren't really told are first the Indigenous resistance to these gold miners that flooded up the Fraser. We do know that Trudeau apologized to the Silkatine a couple of years ago because of the hanging of 6 chiefs, which was really in opposition to the mining that had been going on. The Haida kicked out miners early in the 1850s. There was a lot of moments of resistance. But there was also a lot of devastation because of smallpox that these miners brought, to such an extent that Joseph Trutch decided that we didn't need to sign treaties in British Columbia because essentially the Indigenous populations, some of whom lost like up to 90% of their population, he just assumed that they would die off. So in part, we don't have there's not a big history of treaties in British Columbia because of mining. And there's also, this idea of mining as helping settle and giving it free prior use of the land has been a thread that has continued throughout our history. So even today in the Mineral Tenure Act, you get, or you go, if you want to go get mining, you get a free entry certificate, and then that you pay $25 for, and then you have to be 18 years old, and then you can go online and you can click a place for a mineral claim anywhere you want, and that gives you free prior use of the land. So it ignores Indigenous rights and land, it ignores private property rights, it ignores municipal plans. And so really about, over 80% of British Columbia is open to staking. It really is only parks, a certain proximity to buildings, and some archaeological sites that are off limits to mining. And so we, as the BC Mining Law Reform Network, we're a group of community-based groups and nonprofit organizations and academics, and have Indigenous partnerships, and we strongly support updating, modernizing this law. Most jurisdictions have modernized theirs in some capacity over the last 20 years, and bring today's values. I mean, really, there should be consent required. There should be respect for municipal and land use planning, and having certain places off limits like key salmon habitat or cultural areas. So the BC Mining Law Reform Network is supporting the Kikatla court case. We're applying to intervene, and we're doing so bringing forth the argument that British Columbia really isn't world class. It's not meeting some of the best standards. That it also, this act also impacts land use planning processes and different conservation opportunities, and also that that it doesn't respect private property rights. So we've receive calls and stuff like that from people who live rurally, and essentially somebody comes and starts digging around on the property, and there's nothing that they can do. So this is something that we would definitely like to see changed, and really support and respect the leadership of the Kikatla and all the other nations who are applying to intervene, who have been impacted by mining, this mineral staking regime since contact, basically. And I think it's important that British Columbians learn a little bit more about that history and just how intertwined it is, and how egregious it is that still today, you get this free and prior access to the land just with a mineral certificate. Thank you.